Welcome to the past, where you'll get information related to sports, video games, technology, music, and our all-time favorite ass of the week. What is up? What's going on, y'all? This is episode 221 of The Past. I'm your host, BT. Hope everyone's doing well this morning, this afternoon, or whenever you're listening to this show. I'm not going to lie to y'all, man. I'm glad to be back. Last week was a busy week. I'll state it like that. I was really in my element of trying to do some self-assessment and self-care. I know a lot of y'all may hear me say that a lot, or if it's your first time, you're probably going to be introduced to that term being referenced frequently and often. But I was going to kind of do it. I had a show lined up. That show didn't hit. I was looking to do one with my friends. We didn't really get together on that, and that was partially on me because I didn't really push it. But regardless, I went ahead and, gave some content because I'm all about, making sure we get something on paper. So that was done, which was great. But this week is, I don't even know how to describe what we may or may not have missed this week in sports and tech and stuff. There's a lot of music. We're going to dive in as much of it as we can. It's like I like to do before we get started, kind of getting everything into a bit of a format, which is a plus. I've been working on that for a while, so that's been a helpful, valuable asset. I always like to give, I guess you can say sponsors, but not even sponsors, but just some companies or some references to use for your personal benefit. If you're, looking to reach out and get help during a crisis or a critical moment, either for yourself or for someone you can call the National Suicide Prevention Line. That number is 1-800-273-8255. Very resourceful. I also share with you all if you are looking to, if you're in a domestic situation and you need to talk to someone or you need help or need assistance, the number is 1-800-799-7233. And their website is at thehotline.org. You can also go to the site itself and it will guide you to the actual chat function on their page. So definitely check that out. I've been wanting to shout out my boy, and I've been feeling bad to not do it because he's been a big part of my transition with graphics and designing as a whole. But my friend JV or John Vaughn has a clothing line called Intrepid Genius or Intrepid Designs. He's been doing it for quite a few years. His link is in the show notes. He just released his latest jacket, which was the Pulse. If you are a Richmond City native or about the new bus route, you've seen the buses known as the Pulse, and the jacket fits in that line. And he's more pushing the emblem as well as making a new run or push with the makers, which I'm loving it, and I'm just enjoying what he's doing. Also, if you're looking to get any residential or commercial cleaning done, you can reach out to Sherry Winston. She is a cleaning specialist with Peachy Clean RVA. Her number is 804-726-0366, or you can contact her at peachycleanrva@gmail.com. And I didn't give the link for the previous site. It's Intrepid, INTREPID genius.com. Like I said, the show notes will have that link. If you're looking to get any assistance with getting a notary, she's been doing some moves, and I'm just proud of what she's doing. So, Tiara Henderson, if you want to reach out to her, her number is, her email address is notarydhsigningagent@yahoo.com. If you want to link with her, she has her iFinancial by Tiara page on Facebook. I did mention it before, but Airtight or Eartight, they have a single if you want to check that out. That link is in the show notes also. And J Turnkey Solutions, if you're having any issues with any locks, need to get into your car, anything of that nature, reach out to Jacoby and his business, J Turnkey Solutions. Definitely one to check out. And that's what I have for that. I've been figuring out how to do this for a while, but I guess now I can go ahead and kind of let it be what it is. I'm going to start pushing the podcast into its own little section, because there are quite a few podcasts that I do support and have been following for quite some time. And I'm going to go ahead and get into those while I'm here. First and foremost, as you all know, I always share random observations with Ash. She's been doing her podcast for quite a bit. It is a show that she does every day. She actually just uploaded her new episode today. And just if you want her random thoughts and opinions on various topics and various things going on in life or in the world, good site or a good link to check out, and that's sponsored or set up through Anchor. She also co-hosts a show with Jazz. That show is called Soul Gab with Ash and Jazz, where they kind of get into their personal experiences together as a unit, and they give you more of a spiritual and a mental guidance towards life, and more so about energies and people, how their movements may occur. I know they may talk about it, but I know it's something that I've noticed more lately is about retrograde and Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde. Before, I wouldn't have thought about any of that stuff. For a while, I always joke and make comments about the full moon, but lately it's been kind of coming to fruition unexpectedly. So check them out as a pair. She's back and better than ever. Miss Blog Guy is doing her shows twice a week, I believe. But she is doing a show on mainly the real raw and uncut of entertainment, news, music, sports, and social issues. Check her out. And this is Vernetta. She does shows sometimes on her own. She may have her husband as a special guest, the real Jay Green, and they're good. They have a good chemistry and a good energy, and I always love to see that whenever someone is doing a show. Also, if you are in Richmond and you may be having your fight with love, there is Single in the City. That's hosted by Chelsea Lamore. Just kind of goes over what your status is. If you're single AF, complicated AF, wifey AF. I'm not going to say as fuck, but whatever. I know that I can, but tune in and turn up. Tune in and turn her up. She is Single in the City. And she has a good energy. She is involved with the local radio here as well. Also, Thinking Out Loud. This is the millennial. This is aimed at the 20-something millennial. Thinking Out Loud. Let me make sure I give you the correct bio, because I don't want to just read something off the hip. When I learned how to read, and it's probably gone now, just because I moved it. But it's three. They do work together as a group and kind of just flow into their show of just telling you about what's going on in the world and in news and sports and things of that nature. So check them out. And finally, Melanin Uncorked, melanated, taking on being a millennial, culture, love, careers, current events, parenting, and everything in between. They keep it authentic and unfiltered. Pop the cork and enjoy the ride. Check out Melanin Uncorked. I did meet them, meet one of the hosts at an actual event a couple of weeks ago, which was a great event. Which I'm always for good events anyway, but this one was no exception. So check them out as well. All great podcasters, all great promotions to be part of and utilize to their maximum. So we've gotten all the fun stuff out the way. We're going to go ahead and get into the madness known as sports. First up on the agenda, last week we skipped our weekly picks due to not really doing a show, so there was no need in just throwing out week 10 picks without doing my usual spiel and blah blah of what I felt based on those picks. But we will talk about week 9, which week 9 I actually did pretty good. A lot of teams, to say it without saying it, Las Vegas lost out on week 9. And here's why I say that. A lot of the matchups were kind of in favor of teams that were expected to win winning. It wasn't the infamous any given Sunday stat line. And that kind of trickled over into my weekly picks personally, because I only got 2 games wrong, and that was the Lions loss and the Redskins loss. I can check really quick to see who they played, and that'll kind of tell you what was what with those matchups. But overall, I did pretty good that week. Yeah, the Lions lost to I had Detroit losing. I had Detroit beating Minnesota, but actually Minnesota won that game, and I had Atlanta beating. I had Washington beating Atlanta, but Atlanta actually showed up for that one. But all the rest of the matchups I had right during that week, so it worked out where I ended up going 10-2. Overall, the record was 53. My overall record is 53, 44-1. Week 11, no exceptions. A lot of matchups as always. There are 6 teams with a bye. The 49ers, the Bills, the Browns, Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots. So Patriots getting their bye week pretty late in the season this year, but I guess it kind of works in their advantage because that kind of gets them revved up to make their run towards the playoffs. Since right now, this might be, I'm saying it now, but I know it's early. I feel like this is going to be possibly Brady's last year. I don't know, but we'll see. I already got my picks set up, so we'll go ahead and go down the line. First up, Dallas against Atlanta, picking Atlanta. Cincinnati against Baltimore. Jackson could be starting. I'm actually going to pick Baltimore for that game, even with Cincinnati just getting Hugh Jackson from the Browns after he got fired. Carolina against Detroit, you already know. Even though they played piss poor against Pittsburgh last week, I am going to pick Carolina in this game. Tennessee at the Colts. I'm actually picking Tennessee for this game. Tampa Bay at the Giants. Both teams haven't really been playing good, but I'm going to pick Tampa Bay. Houston at Washington. Washington will get the better of this match, despite both teams playing well above 500 this year, making a playoff push. Next up, Pittsburgh at Jacksonville. Pittsburgh has made it clear they moved on with life without Dez Bryant. I'm sorry, not life without Dez Bryant. Life without Le'Veon Bell. I know I said Dez Bryant, but I know why, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I'm picking Pittsburgh for that matchup. Oakland against Arizona. Turn around, flip a coin. Where it lands, that's who may win. Gonna pick Arizona for that one. Denver at the Chargers. First of all, didn't know the Chargers were 7-2. Second off, Denver has been quietly declining, and we haven't talked about that either. But I'm going to go ahead and go the Chargers for that matchup. Another late night matchup, possible game of the week based on if Philly was looking better than they do right now. Philly against New Orleans. New Orleans will be new and improved with Brandon Marshall. They initially were going to have Dez Bryant. I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But I'm picking New Orleans for that match. Late night game, Minnesota at Chicago. Records are slightly similar. Slight edge, but I'm going to give it to Chicago. And the Monday night game, which anybody who's looking at this matchup would say is game of the week, I'm going to be the wild, reckless selector in picking Kansas City to win on the road against the Rams. So as I always share, those are my picks. Don't hold them to my head or my heart and make them be valuable to what you may claim them to be, but they are what they are. Moving or sticking with football, go ahead and paint a timeline. The news wires went haywire, or the news circuit went haywire when Dez Bryant was confirmed to be selected or to be picked up as a free agent by the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans had another piece to add to their already talented arsenal of playmakers. Drew Brees is in the conversation of being one of the best quarterbacks. You don't hear him talked about as much because, one, he only won one Super Bowl in his career, but two, he has statistically made a dominant impact in football. So this year, they've been just kind of they've been on autopilot, and you think they really haven't played everyone in their division yet, which is going to be even more interesting when you get to the end of the season, because they're going to play Carolina in 2 of their 3 last games. So you have all of that stacked in your favor, and along comes Dez Bryant. And Dez Bryant was going to be not even the answer nor the savior, just another weapon. And an unexpected scene, he did indeed get injured. And that's what the report that I'm sharing today is just about his rehabilitation based on a costly season-ending injury. He tore his Achilles, and it was the last play of practice back on Friday, which would have been, I don't have a calendar directly in front of me. That would have been the 9th. He lost his opportunity to play for a contender, reach the Super Bowl, and make himself even more valuable during free agency. All of this while, part of his grand plan of signing with the Saints. It will cost him some money off season. There's really not a team expected to pay him. Sources are saying as of right now that he likely will still be part of the Saints franchise despite this injury. His rehab will be tough. They say on average there's a 73% chance that players are able to return from this to the NFL after this type of injury. They gave a reference to Michael Crabtree, who, he healed up and he was 26 and he was able to play just fine. And this was 5 years ago. So you have all that being factored in. He was expected to make his debut in Week 11, which is he was going to play in this upcoming game against Philadelphia. He would have made an additional $500,000 in incentives for receptions this season. He would have made $50,000 if he caught 25 passes in the Saints' remaining 7 games. He would have made an additional $100,000 if he caught 30 passes, and an additional $150,000 for 35 catches, and an additional $200,000 for 40 catches. So he could have touched or reached one of those plateaus, if not all 4. But it is a huge hit or a huge blow to the team. But they are doing their best to kind of work through this process as far as how they're going to be as a unit. But they did decide, based on his injury, that they would go ahead and pick up Brandon Marshall. Now, Brandon Marshall is and I always use this term frequently, but I'm going to use it very precisely with this team and with this player. Brandon Marshall is a very unique player. If you go back to his play time in Chicago and his time in, I'm almost wanting to say Miami, those were his peak points when we kind of saw Brandon Marshall break through. So you have that era or that status of Brandon Marshall playing, and now we're getting Brandon Marshall, who initially it was talked about as if he was retiring, but he's back playing now. But he, did sign a 1-year deal. The team would have Marshall in New Orleans on Monday with the intent to getting him into the fold. He did impress the team in his workout. They had initially signed Bryant to the option, but then once Dez Bryant got injured, then obviously that kind of led Brandon Marshall into playing. Put into perspective, Dez Bryant 30, Brandon Marshall 34. Brandon Marshall, he began his, he started off this season with Seattle. He was released back on October the 30th. He had 6 unproductive games. He only had 11 catches for 136 yards and 1 touchdown. This is the 7th team that Brandon Marshall will be playing for. They have all, none of the teams have been been to the playoffs. They, are looking to make a postseason run. So there's a chance that if he gets to this team, it could be that postseason opportunity that he could be dying for or vying for. Not dying for, but vying for rather. Overall, I will say this. I think Bryant would have been a great fit. Marshall is a fit, but not a great fit. Marshall has to kind of come in and just be that available wideout to not to be a factor, but not be a massive factor, because New Orleans is a very balanced offense. And if you really look at how New Orleans has been playing, it would be pretty evident in how they've come together as a unit. So that's where we are with that team and with the lineup of the New Orleans Saints. So I wanted to go ahead, and that was kind of our Saints update and getting that all into the mix and out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and go back in time. And I'm glad that I was able to get a little bit of info on this, because I mean, in a couple of shows before you blink, stories have a tendency to find their way into coming full circle. So, and this is kind of ironic, because I feel like, and before I continue, we're going into the NBA side of the sports world. I would have never expected this type of a timeline to occur, but it's ironic that it has occurred at the point that it has. So I'm going to just paint you a simple but concrete timeline. Season is getting ready to start. The NBA goes through deja vu from last year. Kyrie Irving was with the Cavs. He wasn't really pleased with being the backup to LeBron. He says, I want out. I want to leave Cleveland. They work trades, they work some things in place, they get a deal in place. Kyrie ends up going to Boston. Isaiah Thomas came over to Cleveland only to end up going to LA. But then when LeBron went to LA, they ended up sending Isaiah Thomas to Denver. That's bringing you, that was like the quickest timeline from last year to this year. Now we turn to this year, and at the early part of the season, Jimmy Butler wanted out. No fabricated way of putting it, no bow on it, no nothing. Nothing to be cute about with this instance. He wanted to leave the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's a tough line because I dislike talking about this, but I'm going to say it because it's something that's weird about basketball. In basketball, you should be considered to be a two-way player, period. Two-way player, for those of you who have heard the term but have no idea what that means, is you should be able to play offense and defense well, if not good. And Jimmy Butler is in the two-way player conversation. Another player that's a two-way conversation is Kawhi Leonard. As we saw and we talked about before, Kawhi went to Toronto. We saw the results, or we're seeing the results now. I'm giving all of that information and I'm bringing you to the here and now because here we are with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy wants out. Jimmy didn't want to play. He was going to hold out. He played, he ended up not really playing much preseason. He did play some during the regular season. As they always call it in basketball or in the NBA, a Woj bomb drop. Before I get into the Woj bomb, because it's going to tie into the second story, there was a possibility Minnesota was trying to get trades structured with different teams. New Orleans was one of the teams. Houston was a team. And the team that he ended up going to was Philly. Philly was the other team that was able to put a trade on the table that worked to the liking of everyone involved. And now we have our finish and our closing of this whole situation. And it turned out that, like I said, Jimmy Butler is going to the 76ers. He was able to go to the 76ers with Justin Patton, who is a young big man. Both of them went to Philly in exchange for Robert Covington, Dario Saric, and a 2022 second-round draft pick. So before I go into the meat and potatoes of this story, I'm gonna go ahead and give you some pieces to look at. And this has been made clear with Philadelphia, and I think fans of basketball are finally having to put this to rest. We got to rest the process. It is time to put to rest of trusting the process. The process is over. If the process was supposed to be based on Ben Simmons ain't shooting jumpers. Accept it. Joel Embiid is your big man. He's fully healthy. He's going to miss time from time to time. That's basketball. We expect it. Markelle Fultz has not gained confidence to shoot. It is what it is. Jimmy Butler is coming in, oddly at this point in his career, as a veteran and kind of the more mature of the bunch to bring some light to this team and possibly help them get to that next level of not just making the playoffs or winning a series, but possibly making a run for either the conference finals, if not the championship. Because as we have talked about on this show, and as it's relevant to bring to attention, we're in the post-Eastern Conference LeBron-less conference, whatever you want to call it, or era. I'm saying the conference. We're in the no LeBron James Eastern Conference era. So you have it as a wide open conference right now. Not just a division, conference. Like any team can get their run and get their chance. Let's see. Following the 2018-19 season, they did confirm that Butler will be an unrestricted free agent. There's a possibility he's going to sign with Philly. This ties into the Houston story because I want to add this because I'm not sure if they're going to bring it up. Because they don't talk about it in this article. He's from Houston, so if he had went to Houston, you knew offhand he was going to sign a deal after that contract ended. Philly, I don't think there won't be a shocker of him doing the same in Philly. He wants max money. Getting max money in the NBA is not as easy as it used to be with players looking to play the way they have. So I'm going to give you some numbers because I did mention this already briefly. Butler will be an unrestricted free agent, and Philadelphia had previously expressed interest in adding Butler to make up a big three with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Woj also added that the Sixers are confident they will get a deal done as long as it's a smooth transition for Butler this season. Butler can sign a 5-year max contract worth $190 million, while other teams could offer 4 years at a projected $141 million. It's all about the money. Once the news broke of the trade, Philadelphia's odds to win the title did increase from 30-1 to 16-1. In addition, the team's odds to win the Eastern Conference were bumped from 7-1 to 3-1. He's currently averaging 21 a game, 5 boards and 4 assists, while knocking down 38% of his shots from 3. He scored at least 20 points in 8 of the Timberwolves games so far, and has set out 3 contests to rest and to go through all this jargon of BS known as getting traded. So that's that side of the story. Now, one player who was in the talks that could have been helpful to getting this trade done, and I don't think he was going to be a player, but I think they were looking to involve Houston, as Houston was a piece of a trade, but I believe Minnesota was looking to get Eric Gordon, and Houston was not willing to give up Eric Gordon for that type of a trade, which I don't blame them, but I do. And I know that's a weird way of putting it, but if you know me and you know how I talk sports, it's kind of just one of those things of you really got to think through what's in it or what's gained to begin with. So I'm gonna leave that story. I'm gonna leave the Jimmy Butler story there. Now I will say this. Well, I'm leaving the story, but I'm coming back to it because I want to bring this up. Jimmy Butler joining Philadelphia is gonna bring a fire that those guys may not have. Because remember, Jimmy has playoff experience. Jimmy has played against LeBron. He's played against a lot of big names. So he kind of has that fire part, that dog mentality of, I'm not out here to average 30 points a game, but I'm also going to shut down your best player. So in some instances, he gets a relaxing phase on the Eastern Conference side compared to being on a Western Conference team. Because if you think about it, with the West, Minnesota had already played LA twice before the straight happened. So for him to join this team, and you get in the East, you get Miami, you get Orlando, you get Washington, you get Cleveland. Cleveland hasn't been looking too good. They've been winning a little bit more since letting Tyronn Lue go, which still sucks, but it is what can't control that part of the flow. And now you just mainly the team that really can give Philly a hard time if they can play together is Boston. The tough part with Boston right now is inconsistency as well as time management, because now you have Gordon Hayward coming back. Gordon Hayward is back this season. Jason Tatum's kind of falling back because now he's not a starter. Jaylen Brown is a starter but shouldn't really be a starter, and the time should be a little different. It's just it's a much different environment with the team and with the lineup. So all that got to be put into this as well. So is Philly a number one seed? No. Philly could make top 3 based on the East. The East is not the strongest conference this year. So let's just, as I always like to say, let's just relax. Let's let some chips fall a little bit. Let some chemistry occur. Let's let this percolate and caffeinate for a bit, and then we'll come back and see how Philly looks as a unit. Since my meter on my program is red, my favorite color is red, my emotions are bleeding red, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the status of one of our fallen brethren. And I kind of saw this coming. Carmelo Anthony and Houston have decided to part ways after just 10 games. Now, let's reiterate and getting something clear before I read this article. Parting ways does not mean that he's no longer, he hasn't been released from the team. They're just not really going to be playing him too much, because they have to be able to release him, have him on waivers, all that type stuff. I'm going to make sure that, because this article will likely say it. They're saying it as they parted ways, but it hasn't been, he's been released. He's been released on waivers, and any team can pick him up because they know they want to get something for him. But it's also the factor of, is there anything that you're going to be getting from this Carmelo Anthony at this point in his career? First and foremost, let me get the transparency out of the way. And my roommate and I had this conversation because we always have like little hoops talks here and there and just kind of general breakdown of stuff. And this one really was near and dear because I like Carmelo Anthony as a player. But you gotta face reality. If the championship ain't made it, it ain't coming. And I believe because he experienced it himself, Tracy McGrady is trying to give Carmelo that same advice or recommendation of, go ahead and retire, man. Let it go. It's tough as an athlete to walk away from a game that you love. And it's tough to walk away from anything that you love. But if the opportunity presents itself and you know it's time, accept it and move forward. Not everyone can do the accepting and moving forward part. And that is very, very, very important to think about. Carmelo played 10 games. He averaged 13.4 points in 29.4 minutes. He is a 10-time All-Star. He's limited to options with this move. And I'm giving this story, but I'm leaving out some of the other pieces of this story. Because if you go back and remember, OKC, it didn't work out. He really knew money-wise it wasn't going to be the factor. It was the winning formula. The winning portion of it didn't come together when he was looked at in Atlanta. The winning formula was a possibility when he got to Houston. The problem, and I'm sure this is going to come up in this story, the problem is him going to Houston, he was coming off the bench. And he didn't expect to come off the bench. Now they're giving, this is always those weird hypotheticals. All these hypotheticals are interesting in their own right. And I'm gonna kind of look at what they gave as landing spots and give you some reality. Contending teams will always have a need for a proven scoring depth off the bench. Should he finally be willing to play a reserve role? Should he? Will he or won't he? That's the question, or those are the questions. Anthony will have suitors. Let's break down the potential landing spots. Now I'm just gonna name the teams, and then I'm gonna name each team first, and then I'm gonna break down each team for where this could go or how hectic it may not work. So, first team they gave is Golden State, then they said Philadelphia, then they give Los Angeles, and they give New Orleans. All right, Golden State. Golden State has enough scoring power as it is. They're still trying to get things internally fixed with the whole Durant and Draymond Green foolishness. The question already is coming up looming now of a report, which I don't, and I always share this on this podcast. I am not the biggest fan of reports. Reports are not good compared to story. This is what happened. Report is looking at should they trade Draymond Green? What is that going to solve? Separate story, just something to bring up, think about. I didn't put it as a tab, but I'll talk about it in the middle of this story. Final play, Clippers playing Warriors in LA. One of the players for LA shoots a jumper. He misses. Golden State's going down the court. They're tied at this point. Draymond Green drives down the right side. Kevin Durant is coming down the middle. Kevin Durant's clapping his hands for the ball like, give me the ball, give me the ball. Draymond drives down to the basket. Durant meets him because maybe he could, do a drive and pop. Doesn't happen. Draymond goes towards the basket and makes he kind of just bowls or barrels into the basket and just barrels towards the basket and just falls and turnover, and that was the end of the play. And they went to overtime. Golden State won in overtime, but the game could have went a little different. It was one of the few times that Draymond didn't need to be the go-to guy. I'm sharing that story and I'm tying it into this because adding a player like Carmelo is not going to be the solution for Golden State. Philadelphia already has what they need. If you add Carmelo, and it also comes, each of these scenarios are tough because it has to come down to Carmelo being willing to be a role player, as in a bench 6th or 7th man player. Like, you have to be part of the second lineup. If you're not accepting or open to that role, you're already behind the 8 ball. Next up, the Lakers. Lakers are starting to starting to hit their peak. They're starting to hit their hill. They're climbing now. They're trending, I guess you can say. Can he come in and reduce the attention off LeBron? I don't know. LeBron looks fatigued. And I know that's bad for me to say that, but LeBron is not going to be able to do it all on his own. We got to accept that. Finally, they gave the Pelicans. Pelicans could be the risk-reward option, but it's also going to come down to, can Carmelo really go there with a winning attitude? Because if you aren't able to fit in the team's chemistry or the team's offense, it's going to show. And that's what this whole situation outline is going to come down to in the end. So we'll come back to this. We'll see, once an actual story breaks with Carmelo of what is going to occur. I'll give it by December. By Christmas, we'll know if he's in a new home. A story did come up that he could possibly be playing for, I don't want to say Argentina. I can't remember the team, but it's not, he's as far as the international team. So that's something to look at down the line. Going to college football, we have, I won't say a new top 4 because nothing really changed too drastic. Alabama is still number 1. Clemson is still 2. Notre Dame is 3rd. Michigan is 4. They all remained into their homes. Georgia is now number 5, and Oklahoma is number 6. They are Alabama's number 1 for the 15th time in 28 rankings. There are some teams, as far as rounding out the top 10, to keep an eye out for, which are LSU, Washington State, West Virginia, and Ohio State. And that's kind of your overall presentation of college football as of right now. And I'm not brushing it off like there's not really much to say, but as the saying goes, no news is good news. So, there's really not anything that's massive intense to really bring into the equation regarding college football. There's a possibility, I don't think the deal has officially happened yet, and that's again why I don't like reports until I actually get the story. It'll probably come up in next week's show, but if it doesn't, I'll end up doing my best to put it as a announcement on the podcast page. But Les Miles, I'm hoping I say that right. Les Miles, who was a former coach with LSU, could be possibly taking the job at Kansas. Kansas, I believe we did talk about them last week on the show. Or we were going to, I'm sorry, I take that back. We were going to talk about them last week on the show, but we didn't. But Kansas is looking at Les Miles to possibly come in and get things turned around. Of course, he won't be able to do it until next season because the article that I had did confirm that they'll be letting the coach finish out this season, and then they'll have their new coach come in place. Sticking to football, but not throwing the football, but the football, as I like to call it. Premier League has been business as usual. I will start there first. But there's a big story right now with Chelsea. And this is a big story only because there's a possibility of banning and being involved, where Chelsea could be facing a 2-year ban based on illegal youth team signings. I'm going to go ahead and give because I don't think I've talked about this with soccer. So this is going to be new. This is new for me because I have to be sure I give the information correctly on this. In soccer, you have the national teams, or the major teams that we all know. Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, etc. So every team in the Premier League, right? Well, within those teams, they have what's called a camp or a class or schooling or whatever. or a youth team. And you'll see it as an under 17, under 18, under 16. And it's kind of like a academy. It's similar to basketball, but it's different in the sense that you're being developed on this team with the possibility of, if you play good enough, we'll get you up to the professional team to get some time. And your time can come in a manner of, you may start, you may come off the bench at a pivotal moment for a major premier team, but you're getting that time. Now, that's something that you more so will see internationally than American. Like in the States, we're not doing that. Like, as far as, yes, DC United and the Richmond Kickers are affiliated, but that doesn't necessarily put it in the place of, okay, this guy's playing good, young for under 16 with the Kickers team, let's put him on the actual Kicker squad. It's a little different. So they're investigated for acquiring under 18 players or age under 18 players, including former Blues striker Bertrand Traore, illegally. FIFA has recommended a ban after leading an investigation that spanned 3 years, according to French source Mediapart. The investigation, which was carried out by the Integrity and Compliance Unit of the world's football governing body, found the Blues had signed as many as 14 youth players illegally. FIFA's investigation was prompted by Traore's move to Chelsea from Burkina Faso before his 18th birthday. Mediapart broke down how the penalties would be levied against the Blues. FIFA's Integrity and Compliance Unit have recommended that Chelsea should be banned from signing players for one transfer window for the Traore signing and 3 further transfer windows for 13 other offenses, plus a fine of 45,000 euros. Traore's transfer became a focus of proceedings after FIFA found evidence he had played for Chelsea when he was as young as 16, appearing in a U18 match against London rivals Arsenal. Further details showed Chelsea paid 155,000 euros to Traore's mother to earn a first refusal on the player. This arrangement was supplemented by another payment of 13,000 euro made to AJE Bobo Dioulasso, a club overseen by Traore's mother when her son was also on the books. Chelsea has adjudged to have acted in bad faith by agreeing an option for 4.5 years. This is a clear violation of FIFA rules prohibiting players under the age of 18 to be optioned for any longer than 3 years. Ultimately, Traore was found to have played 25 matches for Chelsea at youth level, despite not being registered with the English Football Association, because, as I mentioned, he already had been because he was sent on loan. When he was sent on loan, that just kind of messed things up. Now 23, Traore helped Ajax reach the UEFA Europa League final during a productive loan spell in the 2016-2017 campaign. He officially left the club to sign for Ligue 1 side Lyon on a 5-year contract last summer. If FIFA's recommendation becomes reality, Chelsea will face an uphill task, remaining competitive in the Premier League and regaining status as a UEFA Champions League club. Achieving both depends largely on keeping up with big spending Man City, Man U, and Liverpool. And they give a little bit more information regarding that. So in hindsight, this was one of those deals that should have never occurred, but it happened, and there's really not much of a way to stop it per se, but it occurred, so now you got to accept the consequences involved. And it's important because when you do things like this, I'm not stating it as, it should be obvious, but it's obvious. You really got to think about how this can affect your team as a whole. And if you don't, then it really isn't, you're not really considering the consequences of doing something like this. So yeah, Chelsea has to accept this one as is. So they get that banned, and they'll give them that process, and they'll go from there with that whole circumstance and situation. We now are on to our stuff, and I guess you can say this is more tech talk than anything. Part of it is a little business oriented, and one of them is something that is weird, but it's coming, and I do know, but I don't know how to feel about it, and I'll explain what I mean about that in a moment. Up first is PUBG. It has been talked about, and it looks like we're finally coming to grips with cross-platform. The reason why is because certain games are finally being susceptible or seen on both consoles, i.e. PUBG. Fortnite was on both consoles already, as well as PC, but it was slow, but eventually coming into the cross-platform world. And I guess it took Nintendo Switch or Nintendo to kind of join in and say, hey, we all can play together. Now, I know this doesn't factor into that cross-platform part, but it's something that is important because PUBG is going to be making its way to PlayStation 4 on December 7th. Even after the juicy rumor had dropped that PUBG was coming soon to PlayStation 4, many gamers still had their doubts. All those negative thoughts can be removed now that they have announced that the game is coming to PlayStation 4 and soon. It'll be in time for Christmas with the proper Erangel, Miramar, and Sandhawk maps. There will be a snow-themed map which will arrive later on in winter of this year. With less than a month away, and its pre-orders already being opened as of right now. To motivate you to buy it, PUBG and Sony are giving away some skins, always a winning formula, including Nathan Drake Uncharted series, Desert outfit, Ellie's backpack from The Last of Us, and a PUBG avatar and theme for your PlayStation user ID. What took so long for it to get to PS4? Microsoft may have paid to have it exclusive, and those generally last about a year, which the game did officially launch on Xbox December of last year, because I do remember getting a copy of it. Sony also may have waited for it to come out of beta, which it did in September of 2018, as it doesn't have a program for in-development games. There are a few ways you can get your chicken dinner with the battle shooter on PS4, depending on your budget. The basic Disc Edition and Looter's Digital Edition give you the base game for $30, or you can pay $50 to get the Survivor's Digital Edition, which adds the Vikendi Event Pass, 2300 G coin pack, and 20,000 BP. The Champion Digital Edition gives you all of the above and also adds 6,000 G coins. While you're waiting, you'll soon be able to get more information on PUBG's website and social channels. This is good for PUBG. This is good for the community. If you really look at it, and I don't want to sound like the bad guy, but I'm going to say it because it's important to point out, we're at a point where Battle Royale is hanging on by a thread. And it's only hanging on by a thread because in gaming, you have to find that niche or that way of having your game stick. And if it doesn't stick for the listener, if it doesn't stick for the viewer or the player, then you got to find something that's going to keep them in tune or acclimated with what you're doing. This is no exception. I like what PUBG has done. PUBG was kind of the originator, and like my boy even brought it up, and it's a good point. A lot of people have an issue with Fortnite because it's cartoony. Take the cartoon part out of it. It's more of the building and shooting that makes it the challenge, which then ties into what Black Ops did, when they brought out Blackout, where Blackout is just pick up guns, pick up weapons, pick up health, and survive. PUBG, survive. H1Z1, survive while picking up equipment. DayZ, same thing. Like, all of those went that route. The building part of it is what it is, but you gotta be a damn good builder to be able to do it, especially when they brought it out on mobile, because that was just a whole nother epsilon of madness in itself. So that's what we have, and that's where we are with those options and that status quo of gaming and PUBGism. Now I want to give a little bit of podcast time, because this is going to be potentially another platform for listeners to get your shows. We all have used it before Spotify was a big thing. Spotify has been a big thing all along. Let me take that back. Before Spotify, before iTunes, before Apple Podcasts, before Podomatic, before those different platforms, and I'm giving all of the podcasts and streaming sources Tidal, Pandora was the thing. Pandora was the wave of music. If you really go back and really break down how listeners got music, it was they had a hard drive, they hooked it up to their computer, they would listen to music that way or transfer files that way, whether it was through CDs or MP3 players. And your alternative was, okay, I want to stream some music, but I don't feel like paying for it, and I just kind of want to have something as a background music or something to kind of balance out the vibe or energy where you are. Boom, Pandora stepped in, saved the day. Pandora has decided now that they will be doing a podcast recommendation engine, which is in beta. It officially went in beta earlier this week. I believe it was on Monday. And they've made this interest very clear. Now they want to be the Podcast Genome Project, which is a tool that's both a cataloging system and recommendation algorithm for spoken audio programs. Much like the company's existing Music Genome Project, which categorizes music on hundreds of characteristics. You know what? I'm gonna go to bed and start over. Characteristics to make recommendations to listeners. The Podcast Genome Project, which I'm now abbreviating to PGP, uses both human curation and scanning technology to help us discover podcasts. As of today, it is in beta. For starters, it analyzes and makes recommendations for podcasts based on over 1,500 attributes, although we don't yet know what sort of characteristics it uses to categorize different shows. Additionally, it also takes users' feedback like thumbs up or thumbs down ratings, skips and replays into account, and combines that with a machine learning analysis and natural language processing to build a profile for each individual user. It'll take some time for the genome to learn your taste naturally, but the idea is that eventually Pandora will make it easier to sift through the massive glut of podcasts available. The company says it hopes to help users find a show they're interested in and keep them listening to new things as time goes on. I didn't mean to blank out for a second. I was like, I don't know if they wrote that right. But anyway, I think I knew where they were going. This is just another window of podcasting. And I really want to take people, and I'm doing a podcast deep dive, but I'm doing a simple discussion on this because it's something that we really don't think of or look at from the podcast perspective. When you had the podcast scene kind of come out, it was mostly Apple Podcasts. That was it. Companies slowly got into the mix. Apple Podcasts was your main, like whenever a person was uploading their podcast from SoundCloud, Spreaker, wherever you were recording from, you were trying to get it to iTunes. You wanted your show to be on iTunes. iTunes is great. iTunes will still be a top music source for listening to music or listening to podcasts. Introducing Spotify, introducing TuneIn. TuneIn quietly reverted or converted to a podcast platform. iHeartRadio has slowly but will be converting into a podcast platform. Stitcher surprisingly converted to a podcast platform. I'm giving all of these names and I'm giving all this information because Pandora ain't behind. They just picking up on what's going down. Google, we talked about it a couple episodes back. When Google joined the scene of being part of the podcast community, that was humongous. And I mean that in the cleanest way possible, because no one expected Google to join in, because no one really was sure what Google was going to do with it, because they already had podcasts available to listen to through Google Play or Google Music rather. So I'm saying all that to say, Pandora's testing this out to give you that algorithm feel of, okay, if you want to use our platform to listen to music, that's cool. We'll let you listen to music free or paid, but we're also going to give you that option to listen to podcasts and not have to go, like, each of these platforms that I just mentioned in that couple minute blurb, it's your option to stay with one platform for your listening. A friend of mine, she does her podcast, Loop That Bish. I'm plugging now. But her podcast is on all platforms. She was dying and vying to make sure that it was on Spotify. The reason why, in hindsight, which I understand now and I understood then too, is if you're mainly a Spotify user, you want to listen to your podcast solely on Spotify. And by the way, I'm going to share this in this plug, in this section, since we're talking about podcasts. If you are wanting to learn about the MLM community or the mid-level marketing community or whatever they call it, multi-level marketing, check out The Dream. It is hosted by Stitcher. I did post a tweet about it on my page. I will find an opportunity to put the link into the show notes here, as well as on Twitter as well, because it is I love what they're doing, and it's a good show, a good series that they started. So props to Stitcher for getting that going. It kind of gives me my own unique theory that I feel like they're not competing, but they're in that same dance of doing what NPR is doing, just from a non-podium microphone status. They're just doing it through podcasting. So props to Stitcher, and of course TED Talks meet NPR. I love what they're doing by far. So that's it for that, as far as with the Podcast Genome Project, or PGP, and what Pandora's bringing to us. So Amazon will be opening some new headquarters. One will be in Northern Virginia's Crystal City, and the other one will be in New York. And I'm sitting here wanting to say Long Island, but I think I was listening to somebody else's podcast and thought about that. But they will be opening new outposts, splitting the investment of up to 50,000 jobs between the two sites. Jeff Bezos was excited to build those new headquarters. They'll allow them to attract world-class talent that will help continue investing for customers for years to come. The company also announced that it has selected Nashville for 5,000 jobs as part of a new center of excellence for its operations business, which is responsible for the company's customer fulfillment, transportation, supply chain, and similar activities. The choice of Crystal City in Arlington County as one of the winners cements Northern Virginia's reputation as a magnet for business and will potentially reshape the western region into an eastern outpost of Silicon Valley over the next decade. and they kind of give an image of what to expect and how it's possibly some areas or parts of Northern Virginia area that they have already purchased. So you're kind of almost near the airport from what they're showing in the picture, near Pentagon City, and they kind of have some purchase locations as well as lease locations. They did come with a price tag, which we're just starting to get public now. Ralph Northam, who is the Virginia governor, and Arlington County leaders agreed to give Amazon $819 million based on the company creating 25,000 jobs with an average wage of $150,000. Location, location, location. I'm just going to leave it at that. The money, which is subject to approval, also includes $195 million in transportation improvements to nearby metro stations, Reagan National Airport, and to construct pedestrian bridge connecting to company's new hub, which will be a newly branded neighborhood called National Landing, encompassing parts of Pentagon City and Crystal City in Arlington and Potomac Yard in Alexandria. Virginia Tech plans to build a $1 billion graduate campus in Alexandria focused on innovation, part of the higher education offerings the state offered the company. New York leaders offered more, which is $1.85 billion, much of it also tied to the company's job growth and salaries. And they go into more information about that. So it is near Long Island, so I guess I was right. I'm gonna, and this, like I said, they give more information in reference to this. I don't want to read it A to Z. This becomes a big move for Amazon because number one, we know Steve Bezos he's the richest man right now, or the richest person right now, and that says a lot for how humongous Amazon has become. Paint the timeline for a moment and really thinking about Amazon's initial presentation. Amazon was a click and mortar online based business where everything was shipped and you just waited out shipping. They had the offer. There was no Amazon Prime. Let's get that out the way first. If you spent so many dollars, then you were eligible for free shipping. And it exploded. It became a gold mine. Now you have distributors nationwide to the point where if you order an item, like if I were to order an item today and I have Amazon Prime, depending on the Prime service that I have, I can receive the product tomorrow. That's huge. Prime, whether people realize it or not, and Prime, to set the record straight, and this has nothing to do with this article, Prime is how Amazon makes their money. If you don't believe me, think about how many people you know have Amazon Prime, or how many people use Amazon Prime. Even if you're using it based on the trial, you think, oh, well, you're using the trial when your 30 days ends, Amazon didn't make any money. Not true. Because in that time period, think of how many products you bought just to have them sent Prime and not pay shipping. Shipping costs, but shipping doesn't cost. The part that costs the most is the work of getting the item to you. And that's not the shipping cost. That is the fuel, that is the driver, that is all of the vehicle maintenance. All of those things are factored into that maintenance part of it to look at when it comes to how shipping and handling impacts as well as how Prime impacts. So I'm saying all of that just to put it in a numbers perspective that the money is coming and the money has been coming for Amazon. What's not thought of, and looking at the article, you don't really think about it. Those amounts that are projected to be paid or go into these are going to come from taxpayers, as well as those who are in the area who could be investing, as well as other major companies that may be helping to invest towards these projects getting completed. And I shared this with someone before, and it's something we don't think about. When a facility is built and it costs so many millions of dollars, yeah, taxpayers' money go into it. That's cool, whatever. How the company or how the business or the site makes their money back is by hosting major events. Prime example, AT&T Stadium, aka Dallas, Texas Stadium, whatever they want to go by today. But their main stadium that they're in now, they haven't paid it off. The way of making the payout for it and to really get the money in some manner to benefit is by hosting your big events, by hosting your concerts that you know are going to sell out. You do a Beyonce and Hove concert at AT&T Stadium, guaranteed sellout, regardless of the ticket cost. It could be $1,000 for one ticket. People are gonna find a way to not have lights but go to this concert, because all those people who are in that facility are gonna be helping towards the maintenance of the facility, as well as the potential payoff, as well as the people who are employed to manage and work at that facility. Random tangent. I know that's a whole lot of information, but I'm just talking about it because it's something that, from a consumer standpoint, we really don't think about. And speaking of consumers, because this is, and I had to really be taken aback by thinking about this. This product is not meant for America. So if you think this product could come to America and you get one, please take a picture and share it with me, because I would love to see you owning the foldable Galaxy F phone, which is expected to be released in March of next year. The cost of it is $1,770. I had this conversation with my roommate. I'm having this conversation with you all. If we really look at the cost of a smartphone, smartphones have gone up in price, but no one outright buys a phone anymore. We lease it. And if you're looking to lease this phone through for the duration of its time, and you do plan on keeping it, props to you. I ain't knocking your hustle at all. But in theory, the phone is not really a huge demand as we think it's going to be. Samsung is looking to add 5G support to the Galaxy S10, which will be launching in February, most likely at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. The much more niche Galaxy F will then follow in March, though without any 5G support of its own. Important to look at. And I'm saying that the way I am because if they're presenting this in another country, that might possibly mean if it does make it to the States, we'll cherish it for what it is. But this was reported in South Korea. It will be coming March of next year, a little later than the launch of Samsung's next flagship Galaxy S phone. The alleged phone will be an exclusive device. They suggest that Samsung hasn't settled on the final price yet, though they already know from Samsung's chief DJ Ko that the company plans to ship 1 million foldable devices in 2019. So they're expecting devices to move, but it's a matter of where they're going to move to, or if they're going to sell as expected. Because having them be sent to stores versus them actually be owned by individuals for purchase is where the reach begins and ends, I guess you can say. Both Samsung and Apple are doing what they do best, and that is keep consumers satisfied to some extent. Now, some things that come out may not be the most applaudable purchase, but that doesn't mean that it won't do what it's expected to do, if that's a good way to put it. So that's kind of the overall carry for Samsung and the Tech Talk. I will tell you all that I am still an Apple baby. So if I know anyone who happens to get the phone and they are able to come on the show, I'll talk to them, or we can sit down, chop it up, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of my cleanest way of putting that. Before we get into our Ass of the Week and Pass of the Week. We do have our music sesh, and I almost think we may do music and podcast sesh together. I don't know yet. I'm still working on this one, only because, like I said, I think adding that show The Dream to this would be like, check it out. I'm telling y'all now, look for The Dream. It's by Stitcher. It has a picture on the back. Looks like it's on the back of the dollar to make the whole Illuminati overhype and things of that sort. But regardless, we did get some new releases. I was in the middle of listening to Anderson .Paak's album. I like it so far. Mariah's new album Caution came out. When I realized that the hit single GTFO was on it, I was like, oh, this album, now I remember, because I couldn't put together why it sounded familiar, but I realized that single was on there. We're not getting a Christmas album yet from her, at least that I know of. Chainsmokers has their new album out. Kodak Black has a new album out. Deadmau5's new album dropped, Level 2, Mouthfeel. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this in the nicest way possible. Drama Free, I had to skip by, and somebody brought this to my attention and I never thought about it. Having a Deadmau5 track featuring a female is different. And I'm not saying featuring a female like, oh my God, it's a problem. It's just I wasn't prepared for this particular track, because there are some tracks that he's done with that. But I do like 10-8, GG. Haven't listened to the rest of it. I think they did an extended so I think I was on the extended musical when I was listening to it last. So that's where I'm at with that album. Ralph Breaks the Internet is out. Papa Roach has a new single out called Not the Only One. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Alicia Cara is out. Oh shoot! I want to say it's Nayla, but I don't want to. Not Nayla Ali, or not Nayla Ali. I am so horrible. Naya Ali has a new EP that was brought to my attention, and I want to make sure that I am right in talking about this person before I continue on this path of failure that I'm trying to be a good podcaster. She has a new EP called Higher Self. I've shared it on my personal page. I will do better on posting more on my podcast page, but this 6-track EP is pretty badass. Not even gonna front. Just to make everyone aware, we are at that point where we will be getting more Christmas albums. First and foremost, before I say that, Big Crit brought out a EP. Fleetwood Mac brought out a classic album. Le Freak brought out was released. They did Le Freak with a more upbeat flow, Oliver Heldens remix. Like I said already, Christmas albums are here. It's officially holiday time, so you will be starting to see some Christmas albums coming soon. Meek Mill's album is expected to drop next week. I'm going to find a way to listen to it as well as give a show. I'm trying to think. There's someone else that has out. If I'm not mistaken, Offset is coming soon. And Kanye's album either is this coming Friday or the Friday after. That's why we haven't heard a lot from him yet, because it's time for him to get excited again and be random. And Drake is possibly working on a new album. All right, got all of that out of the way. And now, my favorite part of the show. And there's really not much verbally to state, but there is a picture, and it is in the show notes. I may do one better and just show the picture in the link sharing. If you go to pastpodcast.com, just scroll through, you'll get to Ass of the Week and you'll see Jim Boeheim, son, whose name is Buddy Boeheim. Seems like his last name was not spelled properly. Who was making jerseys that night, and why did they misspell his name? They were missing. Let's see. They were only missing, and it wasn't bad. They only missed the E, but it was Boheim instead of Boeheim. Bowberry biscuits. I don't know. Whatever. you like it. I love it. But Buddy's last name was misspelled, but it just makes it odd since his father is the coach of the team. How did you misspell his name? I don't know. I can't explain it, but the image is shown confirming it. They did play UConn, and it's not really even, I won't even say it's an ass of the week, but it was an interesting transpiring at the end where the coach was very excited to get his win, because UConn and Syracuse are known to have rivalries and battles in their matchups, and it was no exception. If you go back to last year, not last year, but a few years back when they, I think, went to 5 or 6 overtimes. I might be exaggerating, but it was a lot of overtimes. But the coach for UConn, they won. He gave like the biggest chest bump to one of his players, and then he went up to Boeheim and shook his hand, Coach Boeheim, and the rest of the players, and it was just that. It was a good moment for him. Speaking of which, and I wonder, it's kind of random, where is the Kevin Ollie? What happened? I know he got released from coaching, but did he find another job, or did they just kind of say, you know what, bump it, we're going to keep it moving? Anywho, that's our Ass of the Week. Only Ass of the Week question I have for that one is, who's making the jerseys? That's all I want to know. Who made the potato salad? Like, who made the jerseys and who missed out on an opportunity to get the coach's son's last name, which is the same as the coach, have the last name spelled wrong? We'll let that one be great. It'll probably come to fruition unexpectedly. We bring a tough story to the past, and it is our Pass of the Week, and it is Stan Lee. First of all, before I read this article, I will say, New York Times, y'all never fail to amaze me at how y'all put titles. Because literally it was, Stan Lee is dead at 95. Like, wow. I get it. It's media and it's attention. And it's also, if you see dead, it automatically is going to link you to it. And I'm not saying it in this regard, but I'm just sharing it. It was just ironic to think about. But anyone who has seen any Marvel movies always knows that Stan Lee will always make an appearance in his movies. I, in fact, have seen Black Panther most recently, and it was brought to my attention as a unique path or trend of his movie and comic style. But he was 95 years old. He would be considered the superhero of Marvel Comics. He is one of the most influential writers and publishers in the comic book industry. And he indeed did pass. If Stan Lee revolutionized the comic book world in the 1960s, which he did, he left as big as a stamp, maybe bigger, on the even wider pop culture landscape of today. Thinking of Spider-Man, the blockbuster movie franchise and Broadway spectacle. Think of Iron Man, another Hollywood goldmine series personified by its star Robert Downey Jr. Think of Black Panther, the box office superhero smash that shattered big screen racial barriers in the process. And that is to say nothing of the Hulk, X-Men, Thor, and other film and television juggernauts that have stirred the popular imagination and made many people very rich. If all that entertainment product can be traced to one person, it would be Stan Lee. From a cluttered office on Madison Avenue in Manhattan in the 1960s, he helped conjure a lineup of pulp fiction heroes that has come to define much of culture of popular culture in the early 21st century. He did pass in Los Angeles. I mean, I skipped over, but I didn't really want to. I mean, we acknowledged that he did pass. So I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of accolades regarding him. He was a central player in the creation of those characters and more, all properties of Marvel Comics. Indeed, he was for many the embodiment of Marvel, if not comic books in general, overseeing the company's emergence as an international media behemoth. A writer, editor, publisher, Hollywood exec, and tireless promoter of Marvel and of himself, he played a critical role in what comics fans call the medium's silver age. I'm not going to really read a lot of this in its entirety. This is an article that anyone who did not know much of his backstory, by all means read. I'm going to read it more so. And because of that, he is that's why I have him as the background cover. I mean, a lot of stories were worth talking about, but that's the story that really stuck out to me the most out of everything. Only because even if you have never read or watched his work, you know his work. You knew his craft. Both of my friends who are, I would say majority of my crew, are big on the comic scene. Growing up, I didn't really do the comics to a T, but I was able to rock with the concept of it. But I think because of how receptive I am to things that have gone on or are going on, is something that I can kind of jump into and pick up with no problem. I'm sharing this and this is probably gonna be a unique closing to kind of tie to him passing, but also something personal for me. Value time. We're sometimes so naturally inclined to going, that we really don't stop to value time. We want people to value our time and how important we are to others, but we don't value our own time. And I'm giving that and in referencing it to him because there are decades of stories that people have about Stan Lee, or people have watched movies or read comic books or know instances of variations of other shows that were thanks to Stan Lee, and it's never unnoted or ignored as a whole. A couple weeks ago, my roommate has a pop socket that has the Captain America shield. I'm probably misinforming it, but it has a shield on the back of it. Someone saw it and it triggered a conversation, which I couldn't have because I hadn't seen the show or seen the whole flow, to really keep up with it. But it's one of those things where everyone's line of nerd and line of knowledge, it varies. Like, just a matter of knowing where someone stands in their life and where someone stands in your life, and you should know where you stand in your life more than anything, because sometimes trying to figure out what somebody else is, you'll lose your brain cells. But if you know where you belong within your own, you're already ahead of the curve without knowing it. So that's what I'm gonna leave y'all with today. That's my closing thoughts and my transparent presentation on this topic, on this individual, on Mr. Lee, as well as the comic book community. I saw a lot of people gave a lot of dedications to him, and I mean it was huge. So that's what I have for y'all today. Thank you for tuning in. If you want to go back and listen to any previous episodes, you can go to Spreaker.com/BrideTapePodcast. Podcasts are recorded using the Blue Yeti microphone. If you are able to, I've been seeing that people have been leaving reviews. Thank you. Please leave a review. There are options on the passpodcast.com page to leave a review, as well as you can just go to iTunes and leave a review, or you can send me an email, passpodcastbt@gmail.com. I do check that email frequently and often for feedback and input, because that's ways of making the show better for you all. We are over a month away from the Year in Review podcast. All I can tell you is a lot of my shows are great, and I love doing what I do with talking about stuff, but that is a show that you will want to check out, because I've already announced what I'm doing, but I have even more that I'm just working on this year, that it's giving me chills to end out 2018, but to go into 2019 to be reliable. Might be a clue. But anyway, until next time, y'all take it easy. The Paz signing out. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get any information specifically based on the shows, you can go to Spreaker.com/BriTapePodcast or go to www.passpodcast.com. On both of those options, you do have the information related to what topics were talked about, as well as the specific links related to that specific story. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, the Paz signing out. でもそんなんじゃ